Welcome back, everyone. Our next guest became a YouTube baking sensation, hosting gourmet makes for Bon Appetit. And now she's releasing her first cookbook, Dessert Person, Recipes and Guidance for Baking with Confidence. Please welcome beloved pastry chef Claire Saffitz.
Hi guys, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
All right, Claire, we're going to start off on this note. Drag me, because there are people, and I know this is a pet peeve of yours, where we say, listen, I'm not a baker, I'm a cooker. But you say there's really no difference.
Yeah, it's not your fault if you say that. That is the messaging that you have been fed, so no worries. But I'm here to say that I just don't think that there is a fundamental difference between cooking and baking. If you know how to cook, you can definitely become a baker. And so the book is really designed to get people more familiar with the rules because, yeah, with baking, there are rules and you have to measure. But once you know that and you have some familiarity around those, the possibilities are really endless. So it's just as creative and improvisational and seasonal as cooking. And so that's the argument that I'm trying to make in this book.
Well, I got the baking urge last night, and I actually made your Meyer lemon tart last night. But I'm so
Oh
sorry,
my God.
I couldn't wait. So I
Jess,
had to
come on now. We can't give her nice
Oh
Claire,
things,
my
it's
God.
people.
so good. It's so
It looks
delicious.
beautiful. It looks so good. I actually made that lemon curd last night also. So we were like on the same wavelength. I'm so glad you made it.
No way.
Yes,
I
it's
love
Meyer
it.
lemon season. So many recipes in the book use seasonal fruit and produce because like that's what gets me excited to bake. So it's getting to be citrus season. So I have a blood orange cake right here. So you're right on track.
Thank you.
So, what I love about your book is it really breaks it down for people like me who might not feel as comfortable or as confident as yet when it comes to our baking. Now, here's where might need to feel a little bit more confident, Claire, and that is with your pistachio pinwheels. But you say it's actually not that hard to make.
Yeah, I think it's easier than you imagine. So I have them right here. They have this kind of green spiral,
It
if you
looks
guys can see it
so
on the
good.
camera there.
Oh,
So it's
yeah.
actually one kind of dough, and the dough is made in the food processor. So it's really, really easy.
Oh, I
You just
love
have to
that.
hit the button a couple times. And then you divide the dough in two, like two-thirds in one bowl and one-third in the other. And to the two-thirds, you add some almond flour. And to the one-third, you add ground pistachios that you blitzed in the food processor. And so then you kind of like fold the two layers together and roll it up into a log. And it's a slice and bake cookie, basically. So most people are familiar with those from
Oh,
the grocery store.
Right.
And you have these amazing pistachio pinwheels. So it's a really simple cookie, very freezable. You can make it all ahead and just sort of slice and bake as needed. So I think much less intimidating than you might imagine.
I'm very excited about the next dessert because it's so special. It made the cover of your cookbook, and it's the blood orange and olive oil upside down cake. Now, you say this
Yep.
one might be a little trickier to make than some of the other recipes in the book. So take us through it, starting with the blood orange layer there on top.
Yeah, I mean, this recipe is maybe a little more intermediate. So if you're a total novice, I maybe wouldn't start here, but it's really not that complicated. I think an upside down cake is great because it's one thing. You don't have to then separately decorate it because the decoration is built
Oh,
in.
yeah, yeah.
So the top layer is
Mm.
just super thin slices of blood orange. So I'm going to show you how I slice them. We're in blood orange season of just the beginning. So I have a piece right here, and I like to cut off the end to expose the fruit. And then I just take a thin, sharp knife and kind of slowly I stand it up on its side. And I'm also a lefty. So I just sort of cut down and around, and I'm just careful to look and see the position of my knife that I'm not shaving off, one side of the slice. And just kind of take your
Mm.
time. And as
Oh,
long as you
nice.
have a sharp knife and you're kind of being careful, you get these beautiful, almost like stained glass slices.
Yeah.
And then it's just layered on the bottom. It's a little bit of the juice is mixed with sugar, and that creates this beautiful, shiny, like
Mm.
just, I think, spectacular blood orange layer. And then the cake itself is an olive oil cake. So it's really not that hard. It does use a stand mixer. So, there's a little bit more technique than something like a simple cookie, but it's a super delicious cake for wintertime.
I'm like all just so impressed by watching you slice that blood orange. I'm like, man, who would want to cut into that? But let's talk about the cake because you say that there are ways that we can elevate and even make it better.
Yeah, so this cake uses olive oil rather than butter. So there's some special techniques where you want to really whip the eggs and the sugar really, really well, and that incorporates air, and that helps introduce some kind of fluffiness and lightness into the cake texture. So I'll show you how I finish it. So I have a slice that I've already cut here, and it's just a single layer cake. It's not too complicated. I'm gonna slide it off my cake server. So there's that slice. And then I like to finish it so there's no dairy in the cake at all, which is nice if for anyone that has a dairy allergy.
Wow.
But just because I love dairy, I'm finishing it with a little, this is actually some vanilla creme
I'm gonna
fraiche.
have dairy.
Yeah. I like to put
that's
the dairy back
gorgeous.
into the cake. So you just get a little dollop there.
So good.
Oh, yes, that looks so good.
I think this cake is really like just sweet enough. So it's the kind of cake where like, I mean, it's, you know, it's early afternoon here in New York. I would eat this now. You know, it doesn't have to only be for dessert. It could be breakfast, could be lunch dessert, which is a thing I like to talk about. So any time of the day.
I strongly support this notion, as I am eating lemon tart as well right now. Hey, upside down cake. Are you checking whether it's done or not the same way you normally would with the toothpick? And also, can you take us through how you go through the the reveal of it?
Yes, there's a couple of tricks for upside down cake. I do test for doneness the same way I would test for a regular cake where there was no fruit layer. So I'm looking for the surface to be browned all the way across. I like to poke at it and touch with my finger. It should spring back when you press in the middle. And then you can also use that classic sort of cake tester moment where you poke a toothpick into the center and it should come out clean. So also smell is a great indicator. Smell, I use my nose a lot in the kitchen too. So if it smells done, it probably is. And then when it comes to unmolding it, I think the key with upside down cakes is to let it rest for a few minutes because there's all these like beautiful fruit juices in the bottom and you want the cake to kind of absorb those a little bit before you turn it over just to avoid any hot running juices that are going to overflow. But it's made in a springform pan. So actually the unmolding part is much less scary than you might imagine.
I mean, the way that you break it down really simplifies things and makes it a lot easier for someone like myself who might have been intimidated to approach. But are there different variations to this dessert, you know, just in case you want to switch it up?
Yeah, I think that where people go wrong when they're baking at home is they try to substitute when they don't know if they can or not. And sometimes it introduces like a critical error. So I'm really careful in the book to always sort of say like, here is where you can make a substitution. Here is where you can use frozen instead of fresh. So there's always those little change outs you can make. So often it's adding a little bit of whole wheat flour. And in the case of the blood orange cake, for example, you could use a lot of different kinds of citrus, like thin-skinned tangerines, cara oranges would be lovely. So there's always some flexibility with baking.
I feel like most of us have probably had a baking disaster. I had one in the summer where I made a raspberry pie and I didn't measure the raspberry contents and it honestly like overflowed and it was like a living, breathing thing, like pulsating when I took it out of the oven. The oven was destroyed. But what about you, Claire? Like, do you ever have mishaps as well? Are you mortal?
Definitely. Yes, don't let this fool you. Like this only comes after like lots and lots of trial and error. So I'm constantly like encountering baking disasters. I had a similar one with a pie where I was making a slab pie, so a big flat like thin pie in a sheet tray. And I didn't have anything bigger than the sheet tray to catch the drips underneath. And so the whole, like all the butter and filling overflowed and dripped down onto the floor of the oven and just like filled the whole kitchen with smoke. And it was just like, there's often I encounter those issues where I sort of know that I'm doing something wrong, but I do it anyway. And I don't listen to my gut. So I think a lot of baking and cooking is like, listen to your gut, know when you should correct course. So, but like, again, sometimes you have to make the mistakes so that you can fix them the second time around.
It's all about trial and error. And you know who doesn't blame us for trial and error? Our tummies when we get to eat the product of all of it. Claire, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you for having me. It was so much fun. Thanks, guys.
And everybody, the desserts we were all talking about, you can find those recipes up on our website right after the show. Dessert Person, it is available right now. We'll be right back after this.